It is the mark of a superior game design when a game that has components with this many numbers and kind of flat color palette and a map that looks like this, which to my eye is not particularly pleasing. When a game with components like that makes you feel immediately an emotion and be drawn into an emotional experience, that to me is the mark of a superior narrative game. And I've done a bunch of videos on games that I call, or that are called, or referred to as RPGs in a box. And I've decided with this game, Fallen Land, that I'm no longer going to use that phrase, because truly what I am going to be calling this and other games like it are stories in a box, because truly for me, this game and others like it are attempting to create stories. And the notion of RPG in particular, I think, is brought in, of course, because RPGs create stories and things like that. But there's a framework to the RPG idea that I no longer really want to try to apply to board games, and maybe that's the topic for a separate video. But the point being, Fallen Land, a post-apocalyptic board game by Fallen Dominion Studios, is, in my feeling thus far, an excellent example of a story in a box game, of a game that uses mechanics like cards and dice primarily. The map you need, but it's not crucial in terms of evoking the story per se. It's a functionary of the story cards and the characters that you play and the dice that you roll to get things to happen or not. Is creating a story in a box. And I want to just take you through at the beginning. This is not usually how I start my videos, but I want to just take you through something that happened in turn 2 of the game, and it really is evocative of what this game has been able to achieve. In my game, I was traveling, I was given at the beginning of the game this awesome police car, this awesome vehicle, and it gave me, now I'm playing solo, it gave a great benefit if you were playing against somebody, which is basically if you rolled up next to someone else's town, you could essentially arrest somebody from their town. But I didn't get that benefit. I did get a bunch of other benefits for it, and it was just a cool car that I was driving. In the second turn of the game, however, I ran into a situation where I completed a task that was meant to be giving me some positive things, where I discovered an old computer store and I was able to successfully get some items from the store, and I'm on my way back to my own town to salvage them. But when I pulled up what was meant to be only good spoils cards, instead, in there I got a jinxed card. And the jinxed card says here, when this card is drawn, immediately discard your current vehicle and all its stowable equipment. Now, luckily I didn't have any. And indeed, then all your party is riding these pink mopeds. So I was forced to get rid of this awesome police car and put everybody onto pink mopeds. And we will go through what these values are later on, but suffice it to say, the values I'm getting now from the pink mopeds are not as good as the values I had with this police car. Such as it is, it happened, but the point is that when that happened, I felt like, I can't believe it. I'm playing here in this world alone, but like the world is out to get me. And I did something. I raided this computer store. I was able to muster the successes I needed to get what would have been good spoils. Now, I got a couple of other good spoils because I got 3 cards for that. So 2 of them were good, but it just really got me. That aspect, that feeling of like, it got me, is, I think, what makes this game succeed in its intent to create a world that you travel in, to let you interact with the world, and to have an emotional experience of interacting with that world. And we'll get into what those interactions are along the way of this video. That, to me, that characters interacting with the world is what in other videos I've called, the essence of an RPG in a box kind of thing. But as I said, I'm just moving on to calling it different storytelling, a storytelling through the vehicle and physical components and mechanics of a board game. And Fallen Land really, really does that. Giving you a chance here to look at the back of the box to see all the amazing components that come with the game and the description of what the game is. You can peruse that while I just make a note here about how I came to play this game. Because how I came to play this game is part and parcel of the era that we're living in now, the board gaming era that we're living in now. First of all, it came to be made over a period of many, many years. It was a Kickstarter game and is an example of how an independent design studio can have their vision realized. And that, of course, is a key component of the gaming world that we live in now. How I came to even know about it is another part of the gaming world that we live in now, which is that on my channel, a number of viewers, most notably John Connor, who made the first comment to me about this game that he thought I would like it, and then later in a different video, it's commented again and reminded me about it, brought it to my attention. And generally speaking, the subscribers and viewers of my videos do have a good sense of things I might like, and I'll say, any suggestion I get, I look up. I'm always open to suggestions. I love hearing about things that I might not know about. And in particular, though a couple of viewers, there were some other viewers as well who commented that I might like this game. When I first looked into it a while ago, I was, I have to say, a little bit overwhelmed because of this. This looks very, well, it is quite numeric. I wasn't a particular huge fan of the way in which you would be lining up your equipment to basically cover up the pictures and just looking at all these stats. And from an aesthetic point of view, also just moving over here to the map, I really was not a fan of this. So I dismissed it with concern that it would be too fiddly, and I sort of got the idea of maybe what it was doing, or trying to do from watching parts of some videos, but I wasn't really sold. However, I continued to hear about it from people, and I revisited it, and when I revisited it, I saw some of the cards that were in the game, and it was seeing the cards and reading. I'm not going to go through this right now because I don't want to spoil too much of the game. I will end up showing you one of the mission cards when we get into the video, but understanding the care with which the narrative was created and the care with which the card stats were created so that they are extremely thematic, and I will show you that. That is really what ultimately pulled me into the game, got me to realize that this is a game that offers a lot and offers a lot of things that I in particular like in a game, and so that's how this video came to be. This very much is a game where, like Arkham Horror or other games, maybe A Touch of Evil, other games like this, you need to put something into the text of the card in terms of your imagination, and otherwise it will become just rolling for a dice or a stat. Now this card in particular, which was the first card I drew when I entered a plains area, the plains cards are the easiest to deal with. It said radiation storms. It was a world card, meaning it impacted the entire world and would have impacted any number of players. Again, I'm playing solo, and in essence what you're doing is you're just rolling 2d10s to determine where radiation storms would be coming, and the radiation storm would be in the hex number that you rolled and all the ensuing hexes. And then there would be the impact of those storms if your party happened to be in the hex. Now, when I did this, I got something, for example, I think I rolled 16, and this is where I was. This was just the first turn before this. And there definitely was excitement as I was looking to find the hex number and realizing I just missed it. But if you are somebody who is not interested in reading this kind of text, and this isn't even one of the text-heavy cards, I'll say, if you're somebody that doesn't like to do that, you're not going to get something out of this game, because the bulk of the game narrative comes from these hundreds of cards that come with a base set and reading the impact of what happens on those cards and then dealing with it. And to deal with it, you have your faction, it's called. There's 5 characters that you're playing initially. You may be issued other characters, as I was, due to some card benefits, but you can only have 5 out at one time. As you travel around, you can potentially return back to your town, your base, to pick up other characters if you lose any characters. And it is the interaction among these characters, whether you are dealing with a card that might have a group challenge or a solo challenge, that is the way the game is played. This is a look at my town and party toward the end of a game, and it is, as you can see, a lot of material, numbers, cards, etc. And I want to just go over a little bit about what's going on to explain how skill checks work and how something gets developed over the course of the game. These are my characters in the game, and they are still on these mopeds. I picked up a chauffeur who's driving this moped and who would prevent this vehicle from being stolen if I was playing not solo. I'm not sure whether there is a mechanism that it could be stolen solo, but I've assigned him there anyway because he gives some benefits. Everything that you see here is assigned to a character to buff up their stats, and additionally on the character card you'll see this linked sign here. So for example, our weapons expert, who is a master at that, which gives an automatic success, also gets benefits to combat if he has a ranged weapon. I use this little cube here to remind myself that he is currently carrying a ranged weapon, because it's not necessarily evident the way you're setting up here, to remind myself that this benefit of combat and diplomacy would be ascribed to him if we were doing one of those checks. So somebody like the inventor here, unfortunately he does not have the ultimate set of tools, so he's not getting that benefit, and therefore the cube isn't there. You can see here this character, the veteran town scout, has a wound, and he also has a psychological wound, and this is his psychological wounds base number, as well as the number of physical wounds that he can carry. Everybody has a carry limit, and in this case, for example, it is 16, so you need to make sure when you are assigning cards that they are at or below the carry limit. Additionally, some cards that have the arrow here will indicate to you that there's a special ability here that you need to read or remember. I try to put these at the bottom so they're easy to pull out and see, but really no matter what, as the game progresses, you're going to be getting a lot of cards, and you're going to have to be manipulating them a little bit. I have here up on the left a card here that is a party equipment card that I got at the beginning of the game, which are radiation and biohazard suits. So this is equipped basically to all characters that will allow me to ignore radiation damage. That was really great. And then along the way, I also picked up a couple of attachment cards that give some benefits to the town during certain parts of the game. So those are over there as well. And at the top, I have upgraded over the course of this game from my original 2 town improvements. I purchased a machinist shop along the way, as well as a marketplace, and I get certain benefits as I go. As you travel over the map on various terrain hexes, you will encounter a card related to that hex. I'm going to show you this mountain card that I already completed to give you an example of how it works. This is going to be a party challenge card. There are some that will impact individual members of the party only, but this one, everybody is joining together to solve this problem. We read the flavor text, which says that the rugged terrain is interfering with your ability to send and receive communications with your faction. Annoyed, you nonetheless continue to scan the radio channels. The crackling static is interrupted by an urgent distress call. A desperate man's voice pleads for your help, describing in detail how his band of scavengers were trapped just a few miles from your current location at a nearby excavation site. It has been several days since the building collapsed and their time is running out. Rescue the scavengers. So, the scavengers. Now, I'm reading this to you because it's important to understand that reading and allowing yourself to get involved in these little stories is key to enjoying this game. if you can't do that or you don't want to do that, it basically boils down to coming up with 3 mechanical successes and coming up with 3 survival successes, and I'm going to show you how that works. And then it's just a numbers game and uninteresting, I think. But if you can allow yourself to envision your party in this scenario, that's how the game really drives itself. You will be receiving 3 scavenge tokens for this, and you can keep those even if you fail. And this line is telling you that in order to succeed, you need to succeed on 3 mechanical need to come up with 3 mechanical successes and 3 survival successes. All of these stats down here correspond to these various types of skills and bonuses. So we have combat, survival, which we'll be dealing with here, diplomacy, mechanical, which we'll also be dealing with here, technical, and medical. And that is what these numbers are, and each card will, appropriate to the theme, will give you certain benefits. So for example, this first aid kit here that you can see down here gives you 2 medical benefits, and it gives you 1 diplomacy benefit, but that's it. Whereas the semi-automatic down here is going to give you 3 combat benefits, and that's it. In this case, I will show you the first thing we need to concentrate on is getting these 3 mechanical benefits. So what we do is we go down character by character. As this is a party check, everybody is going to be involved, including whatever you get from your vehicle. And for each character, we add up the number of skills. In this particular case, you can see that there's only a 5. We have a plus on the survival that's going to be active when we get to that, so we need to remember that. But right now we have a plus on the 5. I help myself in calculating by placing a D10 with that value right there to show that I need to roll a 5 or less for that to count as 1 success. Moving on, we see here it's an 8. Here we have 8, 9, 10, and no benefit, so that's going to be a 10. Anything that is a 10 is an automatic success. So I'm going to take this 10 and move it down 1 to show that there's 1 success already before I have even done anything. He is a master, which grants an additional success on combat checks, except this is not a combat check. So he's simply with a 1 success here. Mechanical here, he's got only a 4 value. So to get a success with him, we're going to need to roll a 4 or less, and there's no benefit there. And finally, here on our characters, we've got our officer here. He's got a 10, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. He's got a 19 mechanical ability. What this means is that you take this and divide it by 10, so you get 1 success already for the 10 that you have, and then what is left is a 9. So he needs to roll, he's already got the 1 success, and I'm indicating that by putting this die here, and I need to roll a 9 or less to get another one. So just looking already, just with the characters, we see we already have 2 successes, and ultimately we only need to get 3. Our vehicle is also going to participate because this is a party check. The vehicle offers a 5 on mechanical, so we'll put this up here, and we need to roll a 5 or less to count that as a success. What we then do is we take the matching color die, and I should say that I have 2 sets of the same color die because one came with the solo expansion. But if you didn't have that, you could simply take other D10s if you wanted to use this system, which I recommend because it sort of speeds things up. You could just use any D10s to calculate these values because they're not color dependent, it's just the number. And then what we're going to do is we need to roll these and see how many additional successes, if any, we get. So let me get the box top here and not mess everything up and do a roll here of everything and see what we got. So one by one, I should say, anytime you roll a 1, it is an automatic success, and it also gives the opportunity to roll again if you want. So we're simply going to place this down here because that's another success. We don't actually at this point need to do anything else, but we'll go through this as a 9. So in this case, we rolled above our value, so that is a fail, so that is not a success. This 10, any 10 is an automatic fail, and it will cancel out any success for that character that you might have already had. In this particular case, we didn't have any successes anyway, but he's not going to be contributing any. Ditto on the blue. This is going to cancel out any successes we had. Well, we didn't have any, but that's canceled out. For green, re-rolled a 2, which is, well, actually, we didn't even need to roll for this because we had no remainder, so that's just the 1 success there. And then for our vehicle, we rolled a 6, and that is also a failure. So what did we end up with? Well, you know what? In the end, this was a failure because of that cancellation out. We have the 1 success here that we started with on the 10. Oh, no, you know what? We just got it. We have 1 success here from the 10, 1 success that we started with because that was already 19 and over, and we just got the 1 more that we needed. One more point on the 1. You have the option when you roll a 1 to re-roll 1 die to see if you can get an additional success. However, if you end up rolling a 10 with that die, then you cancel out previous ones. That's a risk we certainly don't need to take because with this example, we just got the 3 that we needed to achieve the 3 mechanical successes to help them. We now need to go back and see if we can achieve 3 survival successes. So I'm going to set that up for you. All right, here are their survival values set up, and I want to point out a few things. On here, I already have 1 success because I got to 10. The reason that I got to 10 was because of this benefit. Since I have this linked assault rifle item, I get a +1 on my survival, and I had here a 9, so that brought me to a 10. So that's an automatic success even before I start. The other one is over here. I have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, meaning that that is 1 success, and then I need for a second success to roll a 1. Not very likely, but this is already giving me 2 successes, and I only need 3. I mention this because I also have the other way that you can impact these rolls is by using any relevant action cards that you may have in your hand. You can hold up to 7 action cards, and you attain these in various ways during the game. In my hand, I have this Survival Instincts action card, and it tells me that I could, during the party exploits phase, which is the phase we're in, gain 2 successes toward a single survival check if I use this card. Now, in this case, I'm not going to use this card. I'm going to take a chance that since I'm starting out basically already with 2, I'm going to be able to get 1 more. But I did have this in my hand and could have used it if I so chose. So with this in mind, we will be rolling our, the other thing I want to point out is your town upgrades can offer you various successes too, and I'm just noticing here, because I have the machinist shop, this would have given me a +1 success back in the earlier skill check. I didn't need it, but I also forgot that I had it until right now. And the other, I have a diplomacy one, a medical one, and then something that gives me spoils cards. So I don't have anything that's going to help on survival, but I'm pretty confident, we'll see, unless it's really bad rolling, that I will be able to get 1 success more with these rolls. Now here, since I'm at actually just a 10, unless I'm misreading the rules, that's all I can do. There's no additional excess to roll for, so I won't be rolling the red die, but with everything else I have a chance at a success, and of course I have a chance, well, you know what, I do need to roll this because I think if I roll a 10 on the red, that's going to cancel that, so I need to roll them all. All right, so this is not a 10, so that's irrelevant. The 7 is if you match or are lower, that is a success. So that's it. That's the 3rd success we need. But let's see what else we got here. The green is a 5. Yet that's another success. We rolled really well here. And that would be a success. And the 2, well, not surprisingly, that's not going to be a success, nor is this 7. However, we definitely got the successes that we needed with that roll, and therefore we would go back to the card and read the benefits of that. In this case, we would gain 1 prestige overall and 2 spoils cards, and then we could read the flavor text that tells us the outcome of this. Had we failed, we would have sustained 5d6 damage, and that damage would have been assigned across the party, taking into consideration the fact that I think at least one of my party members has some armor that could have mitigated it. I can't quickly find it, but at some point somebody had some armor that would mitigate the damage. I'm not going to go through that. It's pretty straightforward in the rule book. That's an overview, though, of how the assignment of skills and successes and failures works. I do now want to take a quick look at the rulebook and talk about it because it is phenomenal. It is an exceptional piece of writing and really makes this game work. As you know, if you've watched any other or many other videos on my channel, one of my massive frustrations with the game publishing industry these days is the fact that the quality of rulebooks is just so poor. This is an example of an excellent quality rulebook, and it supports a game that is, in its overall structure, not actually that complicated, but because, as you could see from the example I gave on the skill checks, there's a lot of pieces to it, a lot of moving parts, and a lot that is abstracted and simulated. But bringing it all together, it flows so cleanly, and the rulebook really supports that. Everything is explained clearly. There's enough pictures, and there are even explanations that's almost like a little exercise you can do to learn how those skill check works. And I'm going to flip to that first here because it's just very, very well done, as is really everything in this rule book. There was nothing that was confusing to me. The very middle of the rule book, it does feel like school a little bit because it's exercises, but in a good way, shows you how to do party skill checks. And what they do is they walk you through some example rolls with an example of a party here and explain what the card is that the group is trying to solve, and then it will take you through with the example roll what the value is or what the success is. So what you can do yourself is try to figure out on your own, knowing what they're trying to come up with combat. If this is the example roll, what would that equal? And then it will walk you through what it actually does equal. So it's a way of checking how well you understand the situation, and it gives 2 examples here with 2 different roles. So there's a lot of learning that can happen, and it's well laid out. You can see all the information. I mean, this text is a teeny bit hard to read, but for this example here, it doesn't really matter because you understand. It's not so much about the flavor. They're just trying to get you to understand the mechanics, and it's excellently done. As is really everything in the rule book. The layout of explaining what the text is and then how everything works is quite clear. You have pictures where you need them to understand what's going on, and you have text where you need it to understand what's going on. There is, it's hard to find a flaw with the rule book. Not that I'm looking for a flaw, but the end of the book, I didn't actually read through this, but I think it would be useful if you had further confusion from page 34 to the end, is an extended example of play, kind of going through the order and walking you through everything. As I said, I didn't feel that I needed that, but maybe watching the video, you'll say I did because I know I made a few mistakes. I tried to correct them, but and here at the end, I do want to pause and just give a look at the extensive credits. You can see this game was in design and development from 2005 to 2017, and it really, really shows in a good way that that time was well spent. The index here is terrific. I randomly looked up things in it to see if they were where they said they would be, and of course, when I was in the book, I referred back to the index, and it all worked out. Clearly somebody copy edited this, and thanks to them for that, because as I've mentioned elsewhere, writing a rule book is basically writing it's a technical piece of nonfiction writing, and it should be treated that way, and unfortunately usually it isn't, but here it was, and it makes the game possible to play. going back to the beginning of the book, just a few comments on certain aspects that as a solo player I did not end up particularly using. One of them was this town defense chip upgrades. You can purchase, in addition to the gray circle upgrades that I showed you, which are right here, the town technology upgrades that grant you various benefits in terms of town health and sometimes prestige or additional movement or additional on skill checks. There are these town defense chips that you could purchase, and what they do is they will inflict some damage on somebody, on an opposing player. So they're really not meant for solo play. It gives you the cost of them to gain. I think you could use them, modify this a little bit by saying that you could purchase a town defense chip and then possibly use it to do a re-roll absent, say, a 1 that allows you to do a re-roll with a counted success. I haven't done that. That's just a thought. I basically just sort of ignored that rule because it didn't seem quite to fit for solo. In a moment, we will take a look at the little expansion rules that have the solo rules in there, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, what did work with that. But I want to just continue on here with the rule book a little bit to talk about some things that I didn't demo. One is the fact that there is, in addition to physical health, there's psychological health. And we saw this with one of my characters that had some psychological damage. Some of the cards will have as a penalty psychological damage, and some of the cards will also ask for a psychological health check. So you have to succeed in that, and if you don't, you get psychological damage, and then you have you can die through psychological damage like PTSD. You can also lose your items or lose the ability to reassign your items. So that adds a little flavor as well, in addition to just the physical wound capacity. The other thing that they have here, with following on the psychological damage and going with the theme of this, is this is a great example. This is a spoils card. It's an autographed bat. And because it's an autographed bat, it means something to the character who carries it. Well, to indicate that, it also tells you that it can inflict some psychological damage on that character if they lose it. And that's just kind of a cool little thematic mechanic that is in the game throughout the cards. There are certain cards and players that are linked to each other. So, for example, if a husband and wife character happen to find each other during the course of the game and be in the same party, that would offer a benefit. There are so many cards, the chances of that happening might not be great, but it's just, again, it's a thematic game that really works on every level to push that theme. The spoils cards, again, are thematic. You've got different cards that are not just weapons. You have equipment, you have books, armor, clothing, vehicles, these relics we talked about, that, like the autographed bat, these are things that come sort of historically with the characters. You have certain events that happen, and then allies that you find or rescue during the course of the game. This is a look at the expansion that provides some solo rules. It also provides, I think, for a 6th player. It comes with some cards and rules for the solo play. And we're going to look here at the solo play rules. There's a couple of variants here. First variant, now I have to say I sort of played a variant of the variant. Firstly, you would be instructed to remove from the decks any card that has a red dot on it. I don't, here, I'll have one to show you. This is an example of the red dot card. It is a card that is basically an opposition card. So it's designed to inflict something on your opponent. But if you don't have an opponent, you wouldn't be playing with it. This is a very thick deck of action cards. And in fact, I believe there's more of the red dot cards in the game than not. It doesn't really matter because there are just so many cards. So even if you just took those out, as I did, to play, you have many, many options for action cards to attain. When you do that, basically the way you're playing is to succeed at the victory conditions, which is a certain level of prestige or a certain level of town health, in a certain number of turns that is basically just determined on how many turns it took you the last time. So in other words, if I play the game the first time and it takes me 10 turns to quote unquote win and attain a victory condition, the next time I played, I would try to get it in 10 or less turns. That's, for me, that's not a great motivator. In general, I'm not so motivated by any kind of victory condition that involves that, but that is the victory condition here. It didn't impact my gameplay too much because there's so much going on with the game that it is more of a story game to me anyway. So I did keep track of the turns, but that part didn't bother me. What did bother me a little bit was taking out this really thick, I'm going to show you actually all the, these are all the red dot action cards. Now, it did bother me to take all of these out and not really have access to them in the game. The solo variant 2 uses these, and the way it uses them is to basically create an opposing party, and it tells you for your difficulty level, you could create 1 opposing faction, 2, 3, or 4 to up the challenge to yourself. And what happens with this solo variant is that you have a table that you are rolling on during the events, I think it's during the events period, in addition to the regular table you roll on. And this one will impact your opposition player and can also have negative effects for you. So it can give them, sort of create a race to the finish because they are increasing their town health and prestige randomly based on this roll. And additionally, with some of the values that come up on this roll, they would be drawing a red dot card and playing it on you. This offered more variety to me because it did involve these red dot cards, but I didn't want to be managing, there's already a lot to manage, so I didn't want to be tracking someone else's town health or whatever. So I simply played by rolling on this table and only taking the effect of the red dot card. So if I rolled on this table and got a 5, 6, or a 7, I think those are the ones that came in, I would pull in the number of cards and then deal with them. And then I just kind of ignored the rest. That at least let me have some random chance that something terrible was going to happen, because a lot of these cards are pretty bad, like, your vehicle goes flat and you lose it, or you lose 4 town health randomly. I mean, it's not great, but I liked the fact that something was sort of acting out back against me. And so that was a little modification I made. The other option is you could even bring in other NPCs, they're called in this game NPC M, to play against you as well. I didn't go over this in what I showed you, but some of the cards that you can bring into your hand allow you to hire extra characters that you can send on missions to do. And in the solo rules, there are rules for doing that as well. And some of these characters can be coming after you as assassins or whatever. I think that's great, and once I play the game a couple more times, I probably will do that. It's a little bit too much management for me right now, but the solo options are varied and quite well integrated, again, into this theme of fighting against other factions and fighting against this fallen land in a post-apocalyptic world. Here's an example of, the game is over, and you can see everything that has been collected here in the town, how many assigned things that people have, the high values that we got on the combat. We never got beyond 4 town improvements. We had some money left, and that's from a prior turn. And these attachments. In the end, it was this Battle Fury that carried us through the final mission that we needed to do. We came up 1 short on this combat value. We got 6 successes, but I had held this in my hand for the whole game. So that was what pulled us over, and this is what we collected during the course of the game. The next up, I'm going to show you, just to go back and see how it's building a town and building resources, what you actually start out with. And by contrast, here is a new town set up at the beginning of the game. We didn't get a vehicle, so we have no vehicle. We just have our 5 characters. This guy's really meant to be a little lower and not in the auction house. And one of our characters, we got totally different characters. We happen to have mostly women, actually, where I don't think we had any women last time. Not that that matters. But we've got this one here, this CPU guru gave us a communication hub tier 1 town technology extra. So in addition to what we started with communication, we have energy production and some water and supplies. So that's nice. Need to indicate that. I haven't gone to the map yet. I'm just trying to show you the main setup here. And we got some characters that will go back into the town roster if we are discarded or if we are killed. So that's pretty good. We got 2 of them. The character that I chose not to use was one that had a negative benefit to us, a preacher that would cause psychological damage to us. So I chose not to use him initially. And we got some, our values are low, but this is how we're starting the game with what we were issued. And so you can see just visually without going through it how you build up over the course of a game. The other point I want to make is that the faction perks, I have to say with my other game, I forgot about some of the faction perks. There's just a lot to kind of keep track of. I forgot about some of them, but we did get our compound hunting bow here. I remember that. Diplomatic connections, each time we're the first player, we always are. We have to subtract 2 from our town events roll. I didn't really go over town events, but that's going to help. And we get a +1 during fight. And during a solo encounter card, we get to re-roll. So that's pretty cool. These are, you have to find a way of keeping track of them. And as I showed you for the linked benefits, I indicate that those are active with a marker. So at least it reminds me to check it out. The other thing is the cards are designed such that when there is a value that you need to be aware of, it has the arrow there. So it's always important to look at those arrows when you are going through your skill assignments to make sure you're not missing a benefit on the card. One point about the luck factor in this game, which is quite high. At the very beginning of this game, a different game, I pulled this Plains card, which was a great respite, but of course I didn't have any need for it. It was the first card I pulled in. It was a healing card. I could be totally healed back. And it says you may draw another encounter card. And of course I fell for that and drew the next Plains card, which was, I won't read you this entire story. Bottom line was, it was a fairly challenging opportunity. I could have, I didn't talk about the flee possibility, but you can actually flee from a challenge. I decided not to do that, and instead I decided to attempt it, which I failed. I did not get 7 combat successes. I actually only got 1, 2, 3, and that was even. I had the possibility to re-roll a 10, but I probably should have avoided this one. As a result, my vehicle was destroyed and I got 7d6 damage, which resulted in 22 damage. So at the very beginning of the game now, I have all this damage on my characters. And of course, I already had pulled this Magnificent Forest card, which would let me heal, but I can't. It sort of came in the wrong order. So I took a risk. I got a little bravado there from the ease with which some of the other games had gone, and decided I'm going to try to get 7 combat successes. Big mistake at the beginning of the game, and now I'm starting at a massive deficit with most of my characters fairly wounded. A few final thoughts as we look here at the back of the board. I've given you a lot of my thoughts along the way, but I do want to make a few more points that I didn't necessarily touch on. First of all, let's start with this, the 1 hour per player. For such an immersive thematic game with so much going on, I'm going to say that this is completely accurate and maybe even could play shorter than that. This game plays fast. Even the first game where I was flipping through the rulebook a bunch, I think it came in at around an hour. I'm really actually amazed. It's the fastest game that I have played that I can think of that has this type of immersive quality and even this much flavor text on the cards and whatever. It just plays really quickly, and that is a huge benefit because, something like Arkham Horror or whatever, I know I keep mentioning that, but in a way it reminds me of that, just in terms of the general mechanics. There's an obstacle to getting that out because I feel like I have to commit to like 2 to 3 hours, and I certainly don't have that much time in a row, and I just lose interest over time. Whereas this, I could take out and know that I could just play a whole game in one session, and it's really astounding, and I think it's a testament to the way the mechanics work with each other. And even though you're dealing with these kinds of stats and adding them up, after a while it becomes pretty quick to do. Again, I've already said things like the rulebook is totally clear. The examples in there are great. I think it's easy to learn, and I imagine it would be easy to teach. Now, obviously, I'm focusing on solo play here, but I do think if you knew the rules and knew how to play it, you could bring people in and teach them fairly easily what to do, and that's also a benefit. The post-apocalyptic theme, I've done, I think, only one. I really like this theme. I've only done one other game with this theme. I'm pretty sure only one on this channel, which was Salvation Road, that I also really liked. That's a very different game, but that's more of a puzzle game. I like that game quite a bit as well. This really does enact this theme well. There's some wonderful art here on the box top, and the stories, the cards, the actions, the skills, the spoils that you get, all of that works together with the theme. It's like seamlessly put together, really. And in terms of, knowing what you're getting into, obviously a lot of flavor text. I think, as you saw just at the very end clip before I started talking about these thoughts, there is a lot of randomness. You're going to get perhaps cards coming in the wrong way, as it were, randomly, and it could really mess with you, even without the PvP aspect if you're playing solo. But that is part and parcel of the game, and if you were really living in this type of environment, you would expect all of a sudden something really bad, or maybe even really worse, to happen. So that too is thematic. The basic structure of the game, quite clear. As far as solo play goes, I talked about this a little bit. There are a couple of different variants to play. I ended up doing a little bit of a mixture of the variant because I wanted to use some of the attack cards, but I did not want to actually create anything that was like another faction to manage. That seemed to work pretty well, but there are at least 2 or 3 official solo rules that you can use, and I demonstrated a very easy way to do a third one. So overall, Fallen Land from Fallen Dominion Studios. And here are the 2 main design credits. Boy, this is a heavy box. 2 main design credits for the game. This is really, this expression is overused, but it's clear this is a labor of love, and it is a successful one as far as I'm concerned, pretty much on every level. I'm not a big one for giving out number scores to games, but if I were, the only ding I would have against it is I wasn't really a big fan of the map. I think there were other ways to convey that information that would have been a little more pleasing to the eye. But aside from that, there really was nothing about this game that didn't enthrall me, provide enjoyment, and really make me want to get it out and play it again. And again, the fact that it is so involving and can be played at such a relatively short game time is really incredible.